Thank you, man. This is awesome.
Yeah, great. So this is for the live stream. So I'm gonna have to use my cheat sheet a little bit. All right, can everybody hear me? All right, sounds good. All right, well, thank you guys for coming here today for this. All right. Thank you guys for coming here today for this meeting with Jeremy Allaire, the CEO of Circle Financial, a digital financial company, and we're just going to have a conversation about the field, trying to target and reach different audiences, and also have some comments and questions from the audience here today. So I appreciate you guys taking the time. But I didn't want to shortchange him in terms of his bio, so I put him on the spot and let him just kind of give us a few tidbits, and then we can just take the conversation from there.
Cool. Thank you, Roger.
All right, thank you for
Absolutely, my pleasure. First of all, I don't usually dress this way, so just so you're aware. But when I'm in DC and I got to meet with senators or whatever, I have to do this. So, but I much prefer the sports coat with the casual shirt.
So I was trying to match you from the last time. I saw you.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I'll give a little bit of background on myself. So my background is that I've been building internet technology companies for almost 30 years. So have built, now this is my third company. I started building companies in the early 1990s when the internet was just starting, and was focused on really trying to build what I think of as infrastructure that makes the internet more useful. And so early on, that was how can you make it useful for how people can publish information and make that accessible around the world, how people could create interactive software that could be used through computers and mobile devices. I spent a lot of time working on that. Eventually, I worked on some of the infrastructure that allowed us to do things like stream video and watch television on the internet or these things. But I've always been interested in how can we use the internet to connect the world together more deeply. And there sort of was a missing layer of the internet, which was, there's sort of, we are all familiar with how we can use the internet as a way to share information or communicate, but there's no built-in kind of money on the internet. There's no way on the internet, there has not been until recently, a way for people to express value in the same way that we think about cash or other value, and to exchange that and use that openly on the internet. And that's what got me into crypto and digital currency. And so I had in 2012 I had grown a company, taken it public. It was traded on NASDAQ, but then I fell down the rabbit hole and got really interested in crypto, and then started Circle 9 years ago, a little over 9 years ago, and have been building that now.
Wow, that's a robust background just in terms of you personally, but looking at the technology and the direction that it's going. I know we're going to hear from some of my students later on. I wanted to kind of pivot to the Converge conference that just took place and touching on some of the points from some of the speakers in terms of the early stage of the internet, what some of the hesitancies were, and you kind of see the same kind of things happening with the new form of currency. So what we aim to do here, particularly with my students, is try to figure out a way in which to kind of break things down in a space where people are comfortable not only learning but using that platform. And I know we talked about some of it at the conference, just about the early days of dial-up and how when Amazon first got introduced and people were hesitant to put their credit card information and leave it there to go shopping, and I kind of see that progression. So can you kind of share maybe your thoughts on some of those parallels that we're seeing now in this space?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think depending on when you were born, you have a different perspective on the internet. But you know, in the early days of the commercial internet, it was slow. It was hard to use. You had to have a personal computer. Even if you had a personal computer, it was the way you connected to the internet was you know, using what's called a dial-up modem, and it was the you know, the user interface. It was awful, right? And when it first came out, people were really excited. Like technology people were really excited because it had such potential to make information universally accessible, or to make communications universally accessible, or to allow people to sell products. But it was the reality of how it was to use it was sort of out of touch, right? So all these ideas, all these .com startups were like, they all had great ideas, or maybe not all of them. A lot of them had great ideas, but the technology wasn't quite there. And then, you know, people invested a lot, and then the reality kind of caught up with the market, and there was the .com crash, and then everyone lost faith, and they said, oh, see, that internet was a fad. It's not, no one's really ever going to be able to build anything on it. But in reality, it was just about where was the technology in terms of, you know, its ability to make, you know, provide a better experience. And so when we think about things like, you know, crypto today or digital currency today, you know, in some ways it's similar, right? There's a lot of hype, there's a lot of money, there's a lot of great ideas, and then when you really get up close to it, you're like, this is a little complicated and risky, and mainstream, you know, people or businesses are not quite ready. But we're right there. We're right there, just like in I think about this like in, like, you know, the early 2000s. We're in a similar place now with this whole world of digital money on the internet, digital currency, and I think, yeah, as we talked about at Converge, right, the next step is what's going to make this easy for people to adopt around the world.
Great. And I think that segues into my next question, because we had some students from my class, particularly my advertising class, attend the conference, and going in, there was limited, if not small, knowledge of the digital currency space. And I think I wanted them to get that total immersion experience so they could just walk away with kind of their own interpretation of what they found. And I've gotten some positive feedback from them, and I wanted to just have, so this is, you know,
yeah,
we bring the group in and have more of a conversation, and I'm going to call them out. They didn't want me to do that, but I want to call them out and ask them to just share some of their comments, because they did a great job of networking and talking to people, just trying to figure out what was being discussed and where their points of entry may be,
yeah,
from different perspectives. And I know with the HBCU initiative that we're working on in terms of digital literacy,
yeah,
that they want to add something to that space. So we can start off with Sarah, our intro, and go from there.
Hello everyone, my name is Sarah Ryan. I'm an engineer, advertising major, Spanish minor from Bethel, Connecticut, and I was the Converge conference, I think it was 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
It was really informational. I really went in with no knowledge on crypto or Web3 or anything. Like, I was a blank slate. And obviously through the panels and everything, I learned a lot, but also through talking to people, you know, representing companies, I got to learn a lot about like kind of what crypto is, like the idea of the blockchain, all that kind of stuff. And can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
So I was actually going to ask, like, kind of, for people like me who knew nothing about crypto, like, are there spaces that are like, I guess, are merging with like financial literacy and like crypto financial literacy, so that like young people like us can start like to contribute with this?
yeah. I mean, I think it's a great question. Sort of, are there these spaces? for people to learn and contribute. I think there's a lot. I mean, at a basic level, right, there's obviously a huge amount of information on the internet about all this. It's easy to get lost. It's easy to not know where to start. You know, as you know, like, we're trying to do things like we built Circle University to basically go through all of the most, you know, core knowledge that's needed, and trying to basically make that available to more and more people to get a core education and take those courses, and we're doing that. I think we're doing that with Howard, right?
Yeah.
But
Just let the secret out the bag.
uh-oh.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay. So yeah, we're you know, so we're producing that content in a way which we think is accessible to someone who's new, who's like, and we had this problem ourselves. We grew from 100 people to 1,000 people over the last 2 years, so like really fast. And how do you teach all these people coming in who also don't have any experience in this? They're new on the job. They want to understand it. They need to. It's their job. So we designed some of this as a way to bring people in. But there are others too. I mean, some of the biggest companies out there, like Coinbase, they have a thing called, you know, Coinbase Earn. We're basically like, you learn and you earn. I mean, this is like a new thing. A lot of companies learn to earn, and so basically, like, hey, if you go through a set of education about this or that part of crypto, then you actually earn crypto. So that's like an interesting thing too. So there's a lot of that out there. I'm not saying that's the best way to learn. You know, I think for students in university or college, almost every college and university has like a blockchain club, and we're partnering with a lot of those too, and we find those everywhere. And I think it's a great way to have a local community of people who can show each other things and experiment and bring in more interest and awareness. So I think those are some of the basic things.
Okay, sounds great. So I'll ask Nia and then Matthew, trying to hide out in the back, to make a few comments and possibly ask a question from your experience at the conference, because I think, again, getting you guys there and just providing access kind of is almost giving us an example of how we can start to have those conversations and one of those entry points. And it's basically your skill set and your willingness to learn. So.
Hi everyone, my name's Nia. I'm a junior advertising major from Columbus, Ohio. I kind of was like Sarah going into the conference, like I literally knew nothing about crypto. Like I kind of heard about it, like kind of interested. But I went, and basically what I took from it was like kind of the networking aspect of it. Like what I learned, there's a lot of like, what are the words? Like in that space, you use a lot of words that are like
Jargon.
kind of hard to grasp, like and understand. Like so, like being able to just like talk to people like outside of the panels and like kind of have like break it down to me in like a more like simpler way, easier for me to understand. Was like was great for me.
All right.
So yeah.
Matthew. So I'm going to actually put one of my colleagues on the spot, like I usually do. We have Professor Carolyn Malachi, who's a Grammy Award nominated artist. She teaches music production, but we had a conversation early on about the creative space and what digital economy and currency can do for artists and creatives. Her class is here today to capture some of the content, but I also wanted to see if she might be able to maybe ask a question or give some insight about what she's doing in that space, and maybe ask you a question or two.
Great.
Thank you, Dr.
Hello.
So, just wondering, I touched on that later.
Cool.
So I was just wondering, do you see folks moving more, becoming less tribal, willing to work with different technologies, you find them as becoming more power, or do you foresee tribal nature, the now industry?
Yeah. It's a really good question, and like I think for someone who's just starting to look at crypto, one of the first things that you come across is like there's all these projects and they all have these tokens and they're all like pumping them up on Twitter, and it's like this whole thing, and communities get really strong and defensive because they have, in some sense, an economic incentive to do so. Because it's like, hey, if my blockchain succeeds and I have a bunch of these tokens, then my value will go up. And so I think it does create some perverse incentives. I think it creates where what we really want is advancement of technology, and so that this becomes useful in society and useful to people. And instead, a lot of times you get people in their own little echo chamber trying to promote their own thing. And so I think what you're describing, I think, in some ways exposes a weakness that I think exists in this ecosystem, in this industry today. Most people, you know, the average person who's dealing with this, they could give a crap about this token or that token, or which blockchain has this or that. They really don't care. This has to solve a problem for them. And does it solve a problem for them? And I think for that to happen, creators, whether they're like, you know, building a startup, building a piece of software, building you know, digital media or whatever, creators, they just want to build things that become useful. And I think in order for that to happen, kind of that all of that noise of all these different competing things has to kind of go into the background and become invisible. And that's part of what you're asking, right? Is like interoperability, this word, and in this space, is sort of this idea that you don't need to know like what blockchain or what wallet is there, that it should sort of just work in the background. Like, I don't think most of us know like what internet mail protocols is delivering our email. Like, we don't know. Like, I mean, maybe you do, but like most people don't know, and they don't care. They're like, I got my app, I got my identity, it goes, right? So we have to get there. We have to get there. And so we think it's very important to abstract away all those different blockchains and build what we call multi-chain kind of solutions that make that easier for people. Because right now it's way too complicated, and as I said, I think there's these perverse incentives that exist that actually creates this tribalism, which is totally unnecessary for actually building the technology out.
Sure.
So talk about solving problems, and technology does solve problems. For one basis,
Yeah.
artists and engineers. So I find very powerful position to be not only immediate compensation, but accurate compensation.
Yeah.
But for the problem that solves now regulation problems like tax accountability.
Yeah.
So are there good players in this space teaching rules who are active now, excited now with Web3 and NFTs? And this space is filling in that education gap.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much out there on that. I mean, I don't feel like there's one one player that's doing that. I mean, I think there's a huge amount of people doing podcasts, people holding Twitter Spaces, people trying to bring experts and share. And obviously, there's like this unlimited number of conferences and other things that go on. But I don't feel like I have a view of like there's this one player, one resource. But I do feel like there are really strong, online media and kind of resources that are being built up around this. But I think in the area of things like NFTs and taxes and liability and compliance, those are hard issues. I think that there are definitely a lot of startups who are also trying to maybe kind of remove or abstract away and remove some of those issues for artists and creators. So kind of building like a kind of like YouTube made it really easy. You just didn't have to think. You could just like create a video channel and go. They kind of made it into like a turnkey solution. There are people in the NFT space trying to do that too, like creating these online systems where it does everything. It helps you do the publishing and the minting and the payments and the royalties and the tax collection and all this stuff. So I think you'll see that also, a lot of advancement in things like that. You're welcome. Good questions. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, for those that couldn't hear the question, it was sort of around trying to make it sort of simple, no matter where you are coming from, to kind of use these, and are we doing anything to help make that simpler? I think like we're doing some things, right? I think for us, for example, if we can get something like USDC widely available, and then people could pay for NFTs consistently no matter where they were, for example, that would be something, versus needing all these other services that you have to like have a credit card or other things to use. So trying to make it simpler in that way, and we're trying to partner with a lot of projects that are trying to build NFT marketplaces that are just easier for users to get into, but we don't have like a magic bullet. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I look at the business models that people speak of. So, some of the current big earners have sort of commoditized information about myself and made themselves a lot of money. At the earlier stage, you spoke of sort of creating things that was really about trying to make cheap transactions. I'm asking myself now, where are we with business models that they use the information as a two-way space? It's not a one-way space about trying to get information from me, commoditizing itself. And it's fantastic that we were discussing advertising space about it. And I'm sort of saying that we need a little bit more models than just let's take your information and sell it to an advertiser.
Yeah.
Or we build a serious profile on you so that we can really set your touch points that you want to do. And I'm looking for something a little bit more than that. I feel that level of information is being abused and it's too powerful right now.
Yeah. It's a hugely important point, and I think that people use this in Web3. Like, people talk about decentralization as a way to move the internet forward, because the internet's become too centralized. And so the kinds of centralization that we're talking about is Facebook knows everything about us, Google knows everything about us, Apple knows everything about us. They sell our profiles to the highest bidder, And we've lost control of our identities. We've lost control of our privacy. We've lost control in these ways, and we've created these monstrous, powerful companies. So Web3 and decentralization is a reaction to that. And so the idea is, how can we enable people to build things, or to both build services that put the user in control, that put the user in control of their information and how it's used, to allow the user to kind of, with their own consent, participate in things, and if there's an economic value to be had, share it with the user, not just the platform itself. And so I think part of the idea of Web3 is exactly that. It's to build services where users are stakeholders, where users have, self-sovereign is a core idea of being in control of things yourself. And the more you can decentralize the internet, the more that you can remove some of the power that exists like that. That's the idea. And so we haven't yet, I think we've seen that proven with, in a sense, we've seen that proven with something like Bitcoin. Like, it is a form of money where there is no intermediary, there is no centralized entity, there's no government, there's no corporation, literally it's just you, and you can take the keys and you have it, and that's a level of self-sovereignty over money that's just never existed before. So that's like the first step. But I think the idea is that you could have, a version of Twitter or Facebook, just using examples like that, where you're more in control, or a version of Uber or Lyft, where the drivers and the passengers owned the platform instead of some company, and they got to vote together on how the fee system worked or other things. And so I think the idea is to kind of democratize and decentralize more and more services, and the technology of blockchains makes that possible. But we haven't yet seen it. All those ideas have not yet been really realized. We haven't seen them at scale yet.
We have time probably for about 2 more questions, because I think we have to wrap up by 5:55.
Yeah.
All right.
Hi, my name is Allaire. I'm a public relations major, and I have 2 questions. First question is, how close are we to the realization of that Web3 platform? And then the second question is, where does the Metaverse come in with Web3? With Meta trying to be the forefront of that movement, and what do you think will happen with the evolution of Web3?
Yeah. So I think, so where are we in terms of like the realization of these Web3 ideas? I think we are still a few years away. I think that there are some things that are needed, like if you go back to earlier examples in the internet, right? You needed, for example, everyone to have like a broadband internet connection before you could really do things like social media and digital media, right? Like if you didn't have that, you couldn't do it. And so we're still like the blockchains themselves, the technology that people build on to make this happen, right? They're kind of in that upgrade right now, where they're getting there, but they need more capacity, right, to be able to do some of these things. So I think we're in the middle of that upgrade right now, and that'll take a couple years. And then I think basically what you have to understand and learn to kind of be a user of Web3 applications and to exchange things and hold things and transact, it's too complicated still. And so what I call like the user experience needs to be brought up a level, and so I think we're very close to that happening. But I think, like there's going to be, what I call super apps, crypto super apps, that come out over the next couple of years that solve those problems from a user interface perspective, a simplicity perspective. So I think we'll see some of those over the next couple of years. And then in terms of like the metaverse, I think the metaverse means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. One way of thinking about the metaverse is specifically like augmented reality or virtual reality, and that is one dimension of the metaverse, is a different an avatar-based kind of digital identity that exists in a digital world. But it doesn't have to be in an augmented reality or virtual reality. It can really just be the creation of places and activities where people can come together and do things in the digital world. I think the vision that Facebook had, Meta, the vision that Meta has, I think it's like the vision that if in the early days of the internet there used to be America Online. There's a local company here, right? AOL. And AOL, like people thought, oh, AOL is great because I get my AOL connection and everything I'd ever need is inside of AOL. But like there was another vision, which was the World Wide Web. And the World Wide Web was anyone can build a website. And all you need is a browser and you can go to that website. And that it was like an open model where anyone could publish, anyone could exchange information, anyone could participate. That led to a huge flourishing of information. And it was that openness that really made the web so successful. And I think for the metaverse, that's what we need as well. We need open systems where anyone can kind of build that's not tied to a company. And then you need ways to make those different metaverses interoperable so that if I have a piece of digital art over here, I can bring it over there. Or if I have an identity over here, I can bring that identity and move it to this other place. And that's not something that's mediated and controlled by a centralized company. It's something that just works. And so I think the crypto crowd, the Web3 crowd, is very committed to that set of ideas, which is in some ways in opposition to what Meta and Mark Zuckerberg are trying to do, trying to decentralize it again to that idea.
Great, thank you. Well,
I can take one more question.
You can take one more?
One more question. Yeah.
All right. Meeny, miny, mo. Sure.
Hi, so my name is Tanner. I'm a junior here in Allaire studying computer information systems. And actually run a blockchain core around the campus. I really wanted to know your opinion on like DAOs, like decentralized autonomous organizations. You talked about how there's a lot of these like big ideas in the whole Web3 space that are kind of not really coming to fruition. I feel like DAOs are one of them that a year ago we were super excited about it. Now it's kind of dull. So I just wanted to see what maybe your thoughts are.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think the idea of DAOs, like the definition of a decentralized autonomous organization, I think kind of means one thing. It's this idea of kind of a loose association of people where the rules of the organization can be enforced by code, and everyone kind of equally participates. It's a kind of democratic, egalitarian vision of the way cooperatives almost can exist, and it's sort of ideologically similar to that. There's another which is sort of a very kind of anarchist view of the world. But I think about it a little differently. So I think about it as how can one establish organizational forms that exist entirely on the internet where we can do that with groups. Like we can set up a Facebook group, or we can set up a Telegram group or whatever, or we can set up a Discord server and like have communications as groups. But what the technology of DAOs does is it allows you to actually enable money and decisions that are actually verifiable. And so when you think about what a corporation is just it's essentially an entity with a governance structure on it, and people get to vote. And they get to vote based on the voting rules of the organization. And in a for-profit corporation, that's voting based on how many shares you have in the entity. And then there's a treasury, which is like the money. And then the organization has a voting system and a decision-making system that then allows you to use that money for different things. I think we're in the early stages of the reinvention of organizational forms that are inherently global, that are inherently natively digital, that exist on the internet. And I think that DAOs are extraordinarily promising as an experimental space for building new types of corporations, whether they be for-profit, not-for-profit, non-government, all kinds of different things. It's just early. It's just early. I think a lot of people got into it because these DAOs had tokens and they were all chasing the tokens, the same kind of thing of these tribes, right? Like people are like, I'm in this DAO and there's a DAO token and I'm going to do some work and it might go up and I don't know what's going to happen. And like that was like what got people into it, which is not a good reason to be into it per se. But I think we're in the early stages of experimentation there, and I think it's a very, very exciting area. My own view is that at some point in the future, I don't know if it's 5 years from now or 10 years from now, probably the biggest corporation in the world will be an on-chain digital corporation that is operating this way. And it will probably produce some of the most amazing products and services in the world. And it'll just be organized in that, mediated by kind of software, blockchains, digital assets, things like that. And it probably hasn't even started yet. Someone will come up with it.
Thank you so much. So I have two things before we wrap up. First, I want to recognize one of our, I didn't want to put you on the spot, but I have to. One of Howard's alum that's currently working at Circle. I don't know if you want to say one or two things quickly, and then we can just move on to wrapping up, or no? Just introduce yourself. You came out of the School of C and works with Circle right now. So. Wrap up by again telling you thank you to coming and meeting with us today. Hopefully we can have you back sometime in the future, and as we launch the program and figure out the best way to communicate with diverse audiences, you know, the young folks here, as I call them, they're on the ground, they're telling us how things are working and how we should communicate, and I think that's what I want to try to encourage my students to do, so we can break things down into a layman's language and really put this stuff to use. At the end of the day, like you said, once it comes out, everyone is going to have access to it.
Yeah.
So it's how do we communicate that to people in a variety of different ways. So, so I think that's the goal for me with my students, and then continue this relationship with Circle. And lastly, I couldn't let you leave without a.
All right.
I know you like blue.
I do. Yeah. Right. Thank you.
With an HU hoodie.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, man, that was awesome.
Right, thank you.
Thank you, man. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you, everybody.
I'll let him figure that out, yeah.
Anyway, supposed to get killed sometime. Did I hear a second?
No, that's downstairs. He just put it on the left.
I just said that. What's your guys' preference on it? I just said your